and had a number of people with a mind to work. He was faithful to his assignment and what he was called to do and the assignment that he had to do at hand. Now, what I want to point out is the significant characteristics that Nehemiah had. Nehemiah was three of many godly standards and qualities. And Nehemiah was courageous enough to stand.
That's right.
He was strong enough to fight. And he was focused enough to finish. When you are strong enough to fight, you have to begin to stand faithful to what God has called you to do.
Come on, wake up.
Now, the significant characteristics of Nehemiah was on his mission. And his enemy was one by the name of Sanballat, and he had great intent to stop Nehemiah from building the wall. Now stay with me, because what I don't want us to miss in this is that Sanballat's intent was to kill and destroy the work of the Lord. And we have to be careful for the people that come into our life, because their intention is not to do the will of the Lord. But in actuality, their intention is to kill and destroy what God has called you to do. Now, Nehemiah, well, we have to understand that the process of deceiving Nehemiah was what Sanballat was. That's what his intentions was to do, was to deceive Nehemiah. But a true builder will always reproduce. Because we see that in chapters 1 through 7 that there were many builders that each took their part to rebuild the Lord's church. But Nehemiah's greatest opposition were the very people that didn't feel he knew what he was doing, and that he really hadn't had the voice of God. But in fact, if you look at it, the scripture tells us that Nehemiah had already went to the king for permission to rebuild the Lord's church. And I submit to you, brothers and sisters, that all you need is God's approval. You do not need the approval of man to do what the Lord has required of you to do. Can I preach it like I feel it? And sometimes you have to understand that people are decided. There have been people that God has intentionally assigned to you to destroy what God has for you to do. But Nehemiah was a man of noble character. Nehemiah was a man that stood strong in the faith. Nehemiah was a man that told the Lord, it does not matter what I may face in this life. I am going to continue to press on anyhow. Nehemiah had a strong desire. He had a strong discerning spirit. He knew that even when all the odds were against him, he had to do what the Lord required of him to do. And that was to rebuild. What do you do when the Lord has instructed you to do something for his great work, and yet on every side that you look, you are opposed by men? What do you do when you come to church and you lay before God, but you have to go back home to the people in your house that don't believe? Nehemiah understood that he had to rebuild and do what the Lord required of him. Now, I want us to get this, because we heard it in the scripture that when Sanballat had heard that Nehemiah was on assignment, they began to mock him in the presence of the Samaritans and the military. They began to mock him, and they said that what are these feeble Jews doing? Do they really think that they can get everything back to normal overnight? Do they really think that they can make building stones out of make-believe? So what I'm saying, my brothers and my sisters, that it is evident that whenever the enemy is against you, we must never be foolish enough to think that he works alone. Oh yes, the enemy has friends too. Oh yes, the enemy has friends too. And what I want us to understand, that little did they know that their intimidation could not stop them true man of God. In fact, the greatest weapon that Nehemiah ever used against them was prayer. Because verse 4 tells us, and Nehemiah prayed. Your prayer life is how we communicate with God. Never be from a person that says they trust God but they don't pray. Because prayer changes things. And when you pray, it shows God that, Lord, I know that I may be opposed on every side. But Lord, I know that I may be going through so many difficulties. But Lord, I choose to pray, because prayer is how you communicate you. When you pray, tell God, Lord, I choose to keep you first. Listen, I need my time, brother. I don't want to sweat. And in this prayer, Nehemiah tells God, he says, thank you, son. He says, in this prayer, Nehemiah tells God, and he says, Lord, we are greatly despised. Because if it's possible, he began to get a little discouraged in his prayer because he said, Lord, if it's possible, turn their ridicule on themselves so that they can see how foolish they really look and trying to stop the hand of the Lord. Listen, one measure of a true leader is to be able to see how he measures criticism. Because to not allow one to run down by the critical while still being sensitive to God's voice even in the midst of criticism. The wheel of Sanballat and Tobias was to discourage Nehemiah. Fear tolerated is faith contaminated. When you tolerate fear, you contaminate your faith. And so what I want you to understand is where faith believes God and loves his promises, discouragement looks for and already believes the worst and tends to pretty much forget about who God is and what he has promised to do and what his spiritual intent is. So what are you saying, preacher? I'm saying that if the devil can get you to quit, if the devil can get you to change your mind, if the devil can get you to give up, then he fears that he's already contaminated your faith. But when we look at Hebrews chapter 10, verses 38, it says, now the just shall live by faith. But if only one draws back, my soul has no pleasure in him. But we are none of those who draw back. We are those who believe to the Lord of saving of souls. So my brothers and sisters, there comes a time when all fear and doubt in your life can no longer take a front seat. You must be willing to move beyond what's humanistically natural and uncomfortable and begin to trust God by faith. I know it may not seem right, I know it may not look right, but if God can get you to continue to believe, if he can get you to understand that my will for your life is that you should prosper and not die. My will for your life is that I want you to forget about the things that are behind you, and I need you to press toward the calling. Nehemiah knew and he understood that what God had called him to do, he shall not come down to deal with foolish people. Can I help you today? It's a danger when you turn your focus off of God and you begin to turn your focus on the foolish. Because the foolish people intent is to kill you before you ever really even get started. So I got to tell you this before I go to my seat. I'm not going to be long before you, but if you produce laziness,
have your way, Lord,
then the results will be procrastination and slothfulness. Nehemiah understood that God had called him to reproduce. His intent was to build the wall of the Lord. He was on divine assignment to rebuild the Lord's church. And whatever it is that you reproduce, there will be an outcome of your production. So if you produce blackmail, your results will be lies. If you produce patience, your result will be self-control. Listen, in other words, you are what you produce. You must be led by the Spirit of God to know his purpose and plan for our life. Your faith, get this, people of God, that your faith cannot be predicated based off of what God can do for you, but rather when you reflect back on the goodness of